This video is sponsored by VoxLink. Hey Wargamers, Games Workshop has announced 10th edition 40k at Adepticon, and alongside that, they have given us a sneak peek at what the new data sheets are going to look like in the new edition. And I gotta say, there are some pretty massive implications for how the game functions, and it has me really excited for a new and improved version of 40k compared to 9th edition. This is reflective of a complete redesign of the way the game functions, right? This is the type of redesign that we had going from 7th into 8th edition, which was really exciting given that we had several editions of really small incremental changes. Going from 7th into 8th was exciting because everything was reset, everything was on equal footing, and it was streamlined and refreshed in a way that was just fun to play. And so we're seeing that same type of rework going from 9th into 10th. Hopefully that doesn't become like a every other edition type thing, but I have a feeling it probably will. But it does reflect several big changes in game function, hopefully for the better. It does mean a return to index hammer, at least to start, right? So just like in 8th edition, when they hit the reset on the 40k rules, they issued a bunch of indexes that had rules for every faction in it. And they are doing that same thing here, but instead of making you buy a physical printed book with a bunch of rules for armies you don't play, they are providing them as free PDFs for every army at launch, which is an easy win for a GW, right? It just makes sense. It gives people that are in the game access to the rules that they probably just paid for. Like if you're a guard army, right? You just picked up a codex. Or if you're a new player, you have easier access to the game. It's a lower barrier to entry, which, again, easy win for Games Workshop either way. The codex format will return, just like in 8th edition. We had Index Hammer for a little bit, and then they started releasing codices, pretty rapidly after the launch. And so this, again, is kind of a smart business decision for Games Workshop, right? They give us the new edition in terms of the index and the rules for that to get us started. So they're giving us the razor, but then they're selling us the blade, right? If you really want to keep playing, you need to buy the codex. So they hook you with the free rules, and then they sell you the rules in the codex, which, you know what? That's the way it's always been, so I'm fine with that. No news on pacing, but presumably that's going to be fairly quick, right? They've really gone into a business model of rapid production, rapid publication of new rules, and so I would be really surprised if we didn't maintain that cadence going into 10th, right? With at least one codex coming out about every month, if not two or something like that. So that type of pacing seems like it's reasonable given the way that Games Workshop is functioning currently. But another huge win for Games Workshop on this is that, they're putting out these free PDFs, but if you want a physical copy of the rules, you can get it in a never before seen version of 40k rules. That is right. They are producing physical index cards that we can use on launch, right? So they are providing another massive win for Games Workshop is that they are finally producing rules on reference cards, right? So lots of people have used various forms of cheat sheets, made their own Magic the Gathering cards for reference about their armies, but Games Workshop now is making an official product that does that. They are producing cards that have unit profiles on them, have rules on them, not just stratagems, not just psychic powers. They are putting the actual data sheets on cards for easy referencing during games. And this is just, maybe this is really the biggest improvement with 10th edition. I love this idea. I love having those cards in my hand for easy referencing. I can set them on the table next to the unit that I'm using. I can set them on the table, in a way that I can see everything all at once. I don't have to be flipping through pages. I don't have to be getting, Cheeto dust on my codex or anything like that. This is the way to do it, and I'm so glad that they are finally producing an official product for mainline 40k that does this. And importantly, it allows Games Workshop to sell this product line, sell their card decks, even if stratagems are extremely pared down, right? Currently, stratagems make up the bulk of the cards that you get in the card decks, but based on the preview, based on the discussion of 10th edition, those stratagems are, again, getting a huge rework. They're going to be pared down. There's going to be fewer of them. It's going to be easier to use, but that probably means that there's not enough of them to fill out a card deck. So instead, they'll provide these reference cards as card decks, and that just seems like a win, right? They get to keep making their cards, and I get a very helpful reference in those cards. Hopefully that continues when they release codices. They said that this is something that they're introducing alongside the indexes, but not explicitly that that's going to continue with codices. I would assume it would, but I don't think that they've said that explicitly. So here's fingers crossed, right? You could see a world where they don't continue it for the codices because if you get the rules in the cheaper cards, maybe you won't buy the codex, right? Here, they're providing a way for you to buy free things in card form, but once the codex comes out, maybe they'll be like, well, you have to buy the codex. You have to spend the $60 instead of the $20 or whatever on the cards. Hopefully that's not the case, but we'll see. And so they've given us a preview of how these new data sheets are going to look in card form, right? It's like Elf's back, but in POG form. But no, data sheets are back in card form now. And there's a whole bunch of really cool things that we can infer from the way that this data sheet looks. All right, so let's break it down starting at the top. There are some pretty massive changes right here. So to begin with, we see in the profile, there are far fewer characteristics. So for the Termagants, we have movement of 6, toughness 3, save 5 up, 1 wound, leadership of 8+, and a new stat called OC for Termagants has 2. All right, so weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, those are all incorporated into weapon profiles. No longer are they part of the unit profile, which I think makes sense. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Everything else, movement, toughness, saves, wounds, that all seems to be formulated the same way. But leadership now is a plus characteristic, right? So 8+, not just leadership 8, but 8+, right? So that suggests that there's going to be some new leadership checks for morale, or maybe for performing actions, or maybe even objective control, but probably not that, right? There's all sorts of different ways that this could go. Games Workshop has said that they want leadership, they want morale to be kind of a more persistent element of the game, having multiple influences on how the game functions. And so maybe we're seeing this plus mechanic show up in more places than just, having guys be removed from the tabletop, because they said that doesn't really feel good. So they want to shift away from just pulling guys off the table to doing something a little bit more interesting. And of course, this is organized in a different order as well. It's organized chronologically based on when you would need them, which is intuitive and I like, right? So you have your movement phase stuff, you have your shooting, combat stuff in the middle, and then you have your kind of end of turn stuff, the leadership and objective stuff at the end of the profile, right? So it's organized in a way where you could access them in the order that you need them, which, just why has it not always been the case? I don't know. So this OC characteristic, that's new, right? It's unclear what or how this works. It seems like the OC stands for objective control. I'm not sure if that has been said officially or if that's just kind of what's been going around the interwebs, but that makes sense to me. And likely seems like some sort of replacement for objective secured, right? So, it's a multiplier for models to determine who controls an objective. If I have a unit of 10 Termagants, maybe that counts for 20 objective control. I compare that to, a unit of like 5 dudes that have OC of 1, right? So the Termagants win because their OC score is higher, something like that. That's basically the way that objective control works in like Age of Sigmar. And so they're looking at imposing a similar rule set here in 40K. I like it. Makes sense. It provides a more nuanced specialization within and between factions, right? So within factions, you can have some units that have higher or lower objective control as a way of balancing their data sheet in a way that provides them with a niche. Maybe they're not very offensively minded, but they have a really high OC score, right? Maybe they're there for objective control, not for offense. I like that. I think that's cool. And that allows you to tweak balance within a codex and also across codices based on OC scores. Clever idea, assuming that's what they're doing. And I hope we see that statistic applied diversely, right? I hope we see lots of different OC values, and that's not just, most units have 1, some of them have 2, that's boring. Let's see OC values of like 5 or 10 or something like that, right? And all the way in between. They also are lacking any mention of a battlefield role on this datasheet. And Games Workshop has said that, there's no force organization chart, there's no detachment in 10th edition. Goodbye Arcs of Omen detachment, goodbye, patrol detachment, whatever. They're all gone. The way that it works in 10th edition is you just take 3 of whatever you want. So if I want, 3 Riptides, I just take 3 Riptides. It doesn't mean that I can't take Hammerheads or Broadsides, right? Right. And so you just take 3. You can take up to 3 of most units. There's a new keyword called Battle Line, which allows you to take much more. This is essentially the stand-in for troops, right? In the current detachment paradigm, but Battle Line units, are things you can take more of. You're not limited to 3. So presumably that's going to be things that have formerly been troops, but maybe it's, some other things too. Maybe other things get thrown in there. Maybe this opens up the option for, special factions to add Battle Line to a certain unit type that they favor, right? Like maybe Farside Enclaves makes Crisis Suits Battle Line or something like that. It also means no more intra-codex competition for slots, right? You can have more diverse builds because just because you bring, 3 of one thing doesn't mean you can't bring 3 of another thing anymore, aside from points. Assuming that there's still points, right? You gotta assume there's still going to be points, right? They haven't mentioned anything about it, but that's got to be like the core balancing mechanic, right? But assuming there's still points, that's the thing that limits you in how much you can bring, not the detachment, not the battlefield role or anything like that, which is cool. And I'm excited to see how that manifests in the types of armies that we see. Below that, of course, we have all the things that the unit does, right? All the things that Termagants do. So we have the range weapons as a distinct block of text. We have melee weapons as a distinct block of text. And on the side, we have abilities that are separated by faction abilities, right? So it's not just like keywords listed at the front. We have Synapse, right? So there's going to be some reference that we have to make to understand how Synapse works. And then underneath it, we have Skulking Horrors. And that organization is really clean, really nice. Lots of room to put in extra pieces of war gear. Lots of room for extra abilities. Very cool, very nice and sleek. Biggest thing here, right, is we have multiple weapon keywords. So if you look at Termagant Spine Fists, they have the Assault Pistol and Twin Link keywords. It's not like we just have a single unit type. It's not just a pistol. It's not just assault. We have multiple stacking keywords. So that means that we can have some interactions. We can have all sorts of cool ways that weapons can function in a more multi-dimensional space compared to their current and past iterations. So that's exciting. That just that change opens up the door for all sorts of new types of gameplay. Ballistic skill is now part of the weapon profile as well. No modifiers based on type, right? So we don't have to deal with, if you're infantry and you're shooting a heavy weapon, then you have to apply this modifier, or in these scenarios, you apply this other modifier. No, it's just built in, right? You don't have to do the math anymore. You don't have to remember the modifier or anything like that. It just tells you right there that if you're firing this weapon with this unit, you need a 4-up. Cool. That makes things so much more streamlined, avoids opportunities for errors, or at least reduces those opportunities, and also allows for more differentiation within and across units, right? You can have different units that are affected by a unit in different ways, right? So we've had this, of course, right? Like putting a heavy weapon on an infantry model versus on a vehicle, right? That's not really new, but here there's an opportunity for things to be slightly more nuanced, which I appreciate. Also including strength as part of all weapon profiles is useful. So this is, this is something primarily that is important for melee weapons, right? Strength has always been a part of ranged weapons, but for melee weapons, we don't have like the melee weapon being strength ×2 or strength +3 or anything like that. It's just this is what the weapon strength is on this unit. So again, simplified. We don't have to deal with modifiers, and that's particularly useful in places where we have multiple modifiers stacking, right? So one of the perpetual things is do you multiply the strength of something before you add or subtract, right? Like the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally stuff. How do you actually deal with that? And Games Workshop has provided guidance on that in the past, but now they don't have to. They just say, all right, Xenoclaws and Teeth, that's strength 3, right? We got Thunder Hammers, they're this. We got Power Swords, they're that. You don't have to deal with the modifiers or anything like that. So presumably, the weapon strength and the weapon functionality as a whole is going to be, or rather, the imagining of the weapon functionality as a whole is going to stay similar. We're going to see differences because of these keywords and things like that. But they're going to be scaled in a way that they're going to be doing less damage because durability of units is going to be increasing. So, here we have Xenos Claw and Teeth being a strength 3 weapon on a Termagant. Yeah, that fits. That's the way it is. But in the new edition, presumably that's going to be less impactful because different types of units are going to be a little bit stronger, a little bit harder to kill. Not Termagants. Termagants seem like they're going to be, still super squishy. But maybe, those tougher units are going to be pulled up a little bit. The more durable end of the spectrum is going to be stretched out to be harder to kill. And then if we look at the abilities and keywords, right, that's all organized very intuitively. I didn't show the keywords there at the bottom of the thing, but that's just a nice place for them to be, and they're separated by unit and faction keywords. It just makes sense. So really nice, clean, and simplified profile here. Now, this isn't actually the only version of the Termagant data card floating around. There are alternative data sheets for Termagants floating around that show both Termagants and Ripper Swarms, and they have slightly different stats, right? So if you look at leadership here, right, that's leadership 9 on a Termagant instead of leadership 8. And so this other data sheet seems to be for combat patrol games, right? Combat patrol games are a new game mode that's distinct from competitive or narrative 40K, and it allows for units to function appropriately given the smaller game size. The idea here is that you're taking the combat patrol boxes and just playing with those. So it's like a side game. It's like, yes, it's 40K, but it's in this closed system, in this contained environment, and so there's a lot less going on in terms of balance, and so you can rebalance, you can adjust things to function differently in this unique setting, and that's important because it allows things that are really, really overpowered in small games to be dialed down, things that are a little weaker in small games to be dialed up, and so hopefully Games Workshop makes cards visually distinct. As like my only concern here, hopefully they make the cards visually distinct. So like if I look at a card for Combat Patrol, I know that's a card for Combat Patrol immediately. Whereas if I look at a card for a Codex or for a mainline 40K, I know that that's what that is. I don't want to be in a situation where I have two almost identical cards floating around and, I accidentally used the rules, or my opponent accidentally uses the rules for one version when we're playing the other, right? So that's going to be a really important part of this, assuming they make cards for both formats and everything like that. This is going to be really cool to have Combat Patrol as a game mode as a whole, right? It keeps small games more interesting because they're, conceptualized. The rules are intended for that scale. It allows for new players to get the best gameplay possible because they're no longer, dealing with overcomplicated rules for what they have. It's just streamlined, it's accessible, and it allows those games, again, to be fine-tuned for that scale. So hopefully those games are more even, more enjoyable, more fun because of this unique scaling, this unique balancing that they have for this game mode. And it avoids overwhelming new players with options that they can't use, right? So if the new box set for the edition is monopose and the new Termagants only have flesh borers, don't give them options for spine fists, right? Don't give the new player things that they can't use. Just give them the rules for the flesh borer and you're done, right? You don't have to deal with extra confusion, extra options that the new player can't utilize using the box set. So I think that's really good. And it ensures what you see is what you get, right? If this is the kit, it only has the flesh borer option on the Termagant, then we know that that's what the rules are, right? So again, just really makes sense. And I'm so excited that they're doing this. All right, so that's the new data sheet. It looks awesome. I love the streamlining of the unit profile. I love the inclusion of these tweaks that they're making in terms of leadership, in terms of objective control. The way that strength and modifiers are just incorporated into the profile, allowing us not to have to deal with so many things overlapping and linking together. It's just straightforward on this. And of course, the fact that it's in a card that I can put on the table and just flip through easily. Oh my goodness, it's perfect. I'm so excited. This, even if the game was exactly the same and all they did was put out data cards, it would be a game changer. But no, they're going, even further and revolutionizing the game in hopefully some really positive ways. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think this is a good change? Are there things that you're concerned about? Let's have a conversation. And as always, thanks for watching and happy wargaming.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. We are probably in the final production run of the invasive wargaming model for the foreseeable future, so if you want to pick one of those up, head on over to Etsy and get them before they are gone. This video was made possible by my kind sponsor, so check out their link in the description below, as well as all the wonderful people over on Patreon. So if you liked this video, consider joining our community over there. Special thanks to Shifty, Durza, Everett Keller, Stephen Cowan, Jack and Acker, Jared Egler, and Scott Heater.